I would like to take advantage of your presence, first of all, to ask you a question. Then I will ask Professor Corrado Giacomini and Jill Berging, CEO of Glambia, to prepare a question to ask to De Castro. My question is very, very simple and is addressed to you. It's on futures, which are a sort of risk management instrument. Well, as far as the new CAP proposal, we know that it also envisages and includes this instrument, risk management instrument. Yes, we're very much conscious and aware about risk management tools, and we were also expecting from the Commission some more additional initiatives. Actually, we don't have quite a lot in the Commission's proposals, so what we are trying to do is to make it richer. So we have included this new insurance system on revenues, which has just been introduced. And then there is something very much important. This new risk management instrument will be in the second pillars, that is to say in the rural development section. This means that at last we are going to have in Italy, also in Italy, together with the regional development plans, we are going to have also a national plan, a national rural development plan with two major benefits for Italy. The first, which is directly related to this provision, that is to say the fact that a new system is being introduced, but above all also considering problems related to expenditures, the obligation to make a national plan, to take national measures, will also create a situation where we have the risk that some regions are not spending resources, and these resources won't be allocated to the regions themselves. And so, first of all, these funds, which are directly related to the insurance plans, and also mutual funds, which is also envisaged by the CAP reform, and also stocking systems, which were also discussed very much recently. So the risk is to go back to the stocking system we have had until very recently, like with the exclusions of some types of cheese. So, well, in this case, in the Parliament, we have included the entire private and public stocking system. So we've got this instrument. We've got also the possibility to use it as for risk management. So these are the three instruments: insurance systems, also funds from CAP, and also stocking systems, public and private systems. That's not too much. It's not so much. I mean, we could not really do more than that, but this is included in these European reforms. Well, this is extremely important. Also related to weather conditions. Nothing to do with weather conditions, because this is also regulated by Law 181 and by European legislation. So I'm referring to the insurance, the other insurance systems. So these risks are regulated by other laws. We are talking about revenues, which is, for example, in Spain, we have the Agrosecuro system, if you know it. We also have something else in Italy, made by SMEA. But we needed to have a public European support with a European contribution, because they require this participation. So I would like to give the floor now to Professor Giacomini for your question. Corrado, the floor is yours. I didn't expect you to ask a question. Anyway, thanks for your invitation. It's the first time for me to take part to this forum, and I think it's an extremely interesting forum of an extremely high quality level. While Paolo De Castro was talking, well, I mean, it's difficult for me to ask a question, because he was talking about extremely interesting issues. Well, I was thinking that I agree with you, I agree with him when you said that European-based initiatives are very late, because now the world is changing very quickly. And that's true, because they were taken based on the previous experience of a previous development, which didn't take into account this situation. So we are very much behind. But what is more serious is that our agricultural world is lagging behind, and it's very, very much worrisome. I was listening to future and option markets, even though I arrived a little bit late. We have been listening to this cash market or liquidity and future and options markets, but we are not in a position to work and operate in this market. I would like to make a few comments on the so-called pacchetto latte, milk package. In France, for example, this was interpreted under the light of the so-called getting ready or being prepared to get out from the quota system. So we don't have to linger on these fantasies or debate. So it's very much important to get ready. I was listening to the previous experience in Piacenza, in the aggregation in Piacenza, but the issue is to be ready and to get ready and be organized in this system. So the major issue is how to manage your organization and to consider your operations, your impact on the others. That's something new, that is to say, this new attitude adopted by the Commission and by the Parliament as far as the organization, the entire organization is concerned. The organization of professionals have been tackled with caution. They have always been regarded as an instrument among other instruments, just like the other COM. But in terms of a more general approach, and also considering the figures that we received, so we've got to cope with a more global scenario. There is another important issue, which is security. So it is only thanks to a well-organized agricultural approach that we can also manage. So we've got to be organized and to try and have contracts to organize the supply chain. So just to add something and ask a question to Paolo. As for the COM, the Common Organization of the Market, which is a part and which gives its contribution, and which is not really applied, there is a lot of confusion. We talk about consortium or consortia. I mean, we need your support. I mean, this approach, the approach that you adopted, should be geared to try and support also our position, like also sharing with the other players. We have talked a lot, but we've got also to be more practical, and I think that in this development or phase, this should be further developed in order to provide with a better support. in order to bridge this gap in terms of delay that we are suffering from. Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to give you my interpretation. Why is it that Europe sometimes accelerates and then slows down? It's because that the 27 member states do not have the same pace, do not have the same speed. So we have the perception that Europe is taking its decision for the strongest and is not supporting the weakest. So all the debate on producers' organizations, and all the efficiency of the productive system is a long debate. So you might say that we are working to support the strongest, like the French, for example, or the Germans. And what about the rest? What about the other countries? Without a structure, I mean, if we are not organized, why do we talk about contracts? Well, I think that, and I agree with you, we should do something for our country. I mean, we have a delay, a huge delay. Some days ago, I was reading about the yields trend and also the gap between Italy and the other countries. I'm not simply talking about France or Germany, but also Spain, Portugal, Greece, the new member states, Poland. They've got growing trends in terms of productivity. Yields are growing. Italy is stagnant since 1980. So there are no growing signs. Lehman visited the agriculture exhibit, the exhibit on technological equipment. European countries, France is investing on technological equipment, in Spain as well, not in Italy. I mean, there is a decreasing trend. What's happening? I mean, this is what's happening. So the productive system is stagnant. No investment, no productivity. No investment on technology. So we hope that we can get results from prices. This is not possible. We also have to work on costs. We have to be organized. And this is not debated. I mean, we talk about conflict, but this is a romantic view. There is no one debating about these issues. Like, how can it be that at 2.5 euros per liter for oil, Spain can make benefits and we lose money? So how is it possible that we will die? I mean, why don't we think about this? We do not have this approach. Also because behind these negative figures, which is also impacted on the revenues, I mean, the Italian agricultural revenues are decreasing in Europe. All the other agricultural revenues, France, Spain and Germany, are growing. Only Italian revenues are decreasing. These are the Eurostat figures. I mean, we also have an Italian component, there is also an element of success. There are also some successful companies. Well, this is quite a huge delay. And I think it's now the right time to come to terms with it, because the advantages of the so-called advantages of this globalization, or advantages deriving from international demand, which is the real driver of the agribusiness in Italy, just like Tassinari would say, the internal demand is really dramatic. We have really downward trends due to the crisis, but also due to our structure, because we are an old society, an aging society, which is not consuming. So the only hope is to grow abroad, but we've got to be organized. Quality is not a knife. I mean, quality has to be taken for granted. We need quality, but we need to be organized, because we've got to debate upon this issue. We always talk about price, what we have to do, the labels. I mean, this is very much important, but this is not enough. Because the co-driver is the system, the organizing system, the organization. But we do not debate upon this. I mean, we can't understand why the others produce in a different way. Maybe in Germany, milk production is easier. I mean, we've got different conditions. In the plain, we have got extraordinary situations. So, I don't know. We would require an entire forum. Thank you very much. And also considering what you were saying, I would like to ask a question to Jim Berging. I would like to ask you, Jim Berging, this question. Which is the organization model that you are using or that you have used, which is helping you to make profits? Maybe we will talk about it later on. Maybe you, Jim, you've got a question to ask to the chairman, to De Castro.
First of all, I hope that later in my presentation I will be able to indicate the model we have been using and the model we intend to use. I might be a little bit controversial in what I'm going to say, Professor. I think that the MTR in 2006 and how it was set out.
What is MTR?
The midterm review of the CAP, yes, has failed us. And the reason for me saying that is that we have had the negativity of a quota system, which has capped our farmers from being able to dilute their unit costs and grow to an extent, obviously. The supports disappeared from 2007 onwards. We had very little support after that, to the extent that many of our farmers and indeed our companies almost became insolvent in 2009, and I believe the emergency funds became too late. And I think the issue for me now, and I'm representing Ireland, which is maybe being a bit partisan in this, but the issue for me now is that I have very significant confusion happening at EU level. Which is confusing my farmers and therefore delaying the process of moving on with this. So I fully recognise the single farm payment and I fully recognise what is being done with rural development, which is very important. A single farm payment can be construed as a mechanism for helping with volatility. However, I think we're not sure what we're doing here, because the MTR was indicated as a move towards the free market and that Europe was going to grow, recover the market share that it had lost in the world, which it has significantly, and take advantage of the needs of other developing regions. But the debate that we're hearing at the moment, for me, can be characterised as give a man some fish and he can eat, or give him a rod and he can eat forever. And we are still in the camp of give a man a fish and he can eat. So, and I think that the failure overall has been the absence of the encouragement and the development of private mechanisms to manage volatility. And I will show you what our own company has done later in that space. But, you know, if you take the Danton proposal, what is it at this stage? And I welcome your sentiments on it. But it's confusing. You know, will we have countries who will volunteer to cut some production at points or to encourage production targets at other points? You know, how would that work? How would a budget be paid for it? And then our farmers are wondering, well, is it possible that a quota can be retained in some way or other, because we would still have to have a quota mechanism? That's very, very confusing. On the insurance side, we're saying, well, we may have crop insurance or some form of that which exists in the States. But again, it's a protectionist type mechanism or a support type mechanism by the state of Europe, rather than these people saying, well, here we are, we're in a free market, we must do these things for ourselves, and we must develop these things within our private companies and within our private organisations. And I haven't seen that. I've seen an excellent presentation today on the CME. We have experience of it within our own company in the US. Europe is light years behind in adapting something like that. And I think we have lost an opportunity from 2006 to 2013 to actually develop those mechanisms and therefore be at least a lot more independent than we are today. Thank you.
Ma sì, più che una domanda sono una serie di considerazioni.
Thank you. Thank you. More than a question, you made a remark, so thank you very much. So this also gives us a sort of different approach. I would have liked that this risk management instrument might have been included or adopted much before, since 2007. There was an awareness of this shock even before 2007, 2008. I mean, we had all the prerequisites and conditions to start off a new situation and a debate around these issues. So we have moved away from this approach, we've moved away from this Marianne Fishburne that you know very well. Marianne Fishburne is an hyper-liberal commissioner with an approach according to which the market can solve everything. It's suffice to mention the problems like, for example, caused in sugar beets. So under Marianne Fishburne, we made one of the most dramatic reforms in the EU. That is to say, we've raised almost 100 plants of sugar beets in Europe, when the international price was around $400 per ton. So now that we are net, we import 20% of sugar beet of our demand. Is that the difference? I mean, the difference is that the international price is $1,000 per ton. So this free market liberalization approach, that it's the market that will solve everything, in many sectors is not working. Or maybe we can say, thanks also to Jim for your remarks, that in some countries this is working, but only if a country is strongly organized and where the international system is very well structured and organized. So these countries, these European countries, have got also great experience in international relations, like in the Netherlands, for example. There is the first citrus fruit exporters. They do not produce it, but it's the first exporter of citrus fruits, because thanks to their organizational skills and capabilities. So they can be organized, and also they can bridge the gaps, all the lacks of organization of producing countries. So Europe is made by 27, 28 countries, as for the 1st of July with Croatia. So in Europe it's very much difficult to have a common view, a common approach. We have an example in Italian newspapers. You might have read this in Italian newspapers, The Guardian or other European countries. This is evidenced by the move on oil. It's amazing what happened. I mean, this is not very much related to what we are doing, but just to say that I agree with you, there is much confusion. This is also due to the pressure made by a lot of countries. So, like, you make a debate for 1 year, the European Commission takes a decision or approves, for example, a move, or there's no proposal is approved on the ban to market free oil. And yesterday the Commission says that Cameron and the Dutch Prime Minister said, no, this is absurd, it's not possible. I mean, and so it's reclaimed. It's with this proposal is withdrawn. Whether it's right or not, I mean, I think it's right. And the European Parliament will express its opinion. Charles will express the opinion next Wednesday. But I think that with this way of working, it's rather absurd. I mean, prime ministers working and obliging the Commission to reconsider their decisions. Of course, we have to come to terms with 27 different countries. So the Parliament is very much important to my viewpoint, because it is within the Parliament where a sort of synergic approach can be taken. Up to 15 ministers, this can work. But when they are too many, it's very much difficult to have a synergic job, because they meet once a month for 1 hour. They read their report in their own language. They read newspapers, and then they go back home. We stay there every week discussing among each other. And the 27 deputies belonging to the Commission make a summary, and you vote. This is the line. Maybe in the future things will improve, but undoubtedly As far as we are concerned, we've got confusion, and this confusion has to be eliminated. I mean, we don't have a clear instrument to come to terms with this confusion. Even though the Romanian commissioner entered the European Commission in 2007. I mean, things are very much complicated. It's like a complicated machine to manage. Thank you very much. 5 minutes. Luna Dena, another question, maybe? One question. Just one question, which encompasses 3 or 4 questions, if you allow me. Paolo, I would like to have your judgment, your opinion for us, for the farmers, because in this extremely interesting worldwide scenario, because the world is asking for cheese, for milk, so that's interesting. I think that Europe has partially lost an opportunity with quota regime, because the market increase was absorbed. This market increase was absorbed by other countries. For our country and for our European market, we have no more possibilities, or we don't have many possibilities, and we are penalized by milk quotas because we could not grow. We applied this quota system in a sort of wrong way. This is coming to an end, and they are also now trying to cut this CAP. In Lombardy, in my farm, I had 50% cut my CAP, 38, 39%. So, which are our possibilities? How can we try and respond to this? Because milk package was very much interesting for cheese planning and programming, but we need to have answers. We would like to have more answers. Then another problem. Proteins. To feed animals, we need proteins. Europe is importing 90% of soybean from the US. How can we solve that? Wouldn't it be better to reconsider health care norms, so that some animal proteins might, on some species, be reconsidered or considered in order to smooth a little bit this protein dependence? I agree with my entrepreneurs friends. I'm not complaining about prices for its own sake, but I would like to say something about costs. Also because I accept to have benchmark among farmers. I'm not so much afraid about German or Dutch colleagues, but we've got to talk about different costs. We have got friends having, for example, farms in Slovakia. They buy milk more or less at the same price. They've got the same cost. But employees cost 400, 500 euros. They have no severance or indemnities. This makes the market more competitive. If the benchmark says that my performance is an adequate performance, I need also to have a rule. Otherwise, my conclusion is that I've got to do what I need on my own, independently. Yes, I prefer to answer this question. So, we have already voted these issues. As for animal flour, we've started to use it, at least in fish culture. So, because this is wasted low-cost energy. But the point is that also in these instances, and you might have read about these issues risks, like, for example, on the TV, they were talking about mad cow disease, and so this is generating panic. This generates panic, so we've got to be much aware of this. So trusting science is useful, much more and much wiser. So we've got to work on that, I agree with you. Also, trying to increase the production of vegetable proteins. And this is also envisaged by this new CAP. A percentage of vegetable-based proteins. The very last question.
Vediamo chi arriva prima. Sì, grazie. Grazie, buongiorno professor De Castro.
Thank you, Professor De Castro. I'm having an experience with the European Commission, and I'm really very much impressed and puzzled. Figures are very clear. European Union has failed in these 23 years. This means that we have wasted huge resources, and this has obliged our farmers to stagnate, and this to the detriment of the best performers. And the policies about the genetically modified organisms has created a situation where we can import genetically modified organisms, because the feed that we get to our animals are really based on these genetically modified organisms, but we cannot, produce them. And this is making our market really not so much competitive. And in the European Union, the debate is not improving. And we are listening to really impressive debates. If we are talking about 2.5% of worldwide market for a continent which is really an extraordinary continent with huge potentials, because in the European Union we have the most wonderful anthropological reservoir that would make us the worldwide leading continent. Look at Ireland, is an extraordinary country which is absolutely competitive vis-à-vis New Zealand. But until today, Ireland could not produce what they should. They have a project within the 2020. But which are the instruments that the Commission, the Parliament, the European Parliament and the Council might provide us? As for production limits, we have a lot of hindrances, and also the so-called capping policies, above all for the larger companies. So this is really penalizing for our farmers. And then we've also, you talked about insurance instruments, like you said before. You talked about a proposal which are penalizing those who produce more and rewarding for those who produce less. So this is another penalizing instrument through economies of scales. Then we've got another huge problem, which was also stressed today very clearly. That is to say, we try to bridge this gap not with efficiencies but with a sort of distortion in terms of competition, like, for example, giving a huge power to the organization. So through the milk package, like the associations that might have up to 1/3 of the national product can visit the Italian entrepreneurs, and they can say, you cannot make your contracts to negotiate your contracts with us so latte, but we have 30% of the national of our domestic milk. So these are our members. We can deal with these members, and you have to work independently. So this situation is really influencing our market. So this seems to be regarded as the best remedy to give our farmers a revenue, which in other countries is determined by competitiveness, by the equipment, technological equipment, and you in European Union, you are not considering this as the priority.
Semplice. La PAC è
So the Common Agricultural Policy was created for our farmers. So farmers and cooperatives, you cannot think that this policy would provide an answer also to entrepreneurs. Otherwise, we wouldn't understand why is it that someone is asking to preserve and to keep milk quotas. If you make a survey among farmers and cooperatives, I can assure you that they would ask you to maintain milk quotas. Italy would like to maintain milk quotas. We talked about that also in Assolate meetings. What you find the greatest failure is exactly what they want. And since we are a democratic society, like, as for example, of genetically modified organism, a law was unanimously approved to apply a moratorium on GMOs. Why? This is democracy with voting. I agree with you. I've got a different view and approach. I'm accused to have this sort of like vision. But this is what the majority has decided. I mean, these are the facts. I mean, I'm not talking about nonsense. So this is what the entrepreneurs, the cooperatives or our stakeholders are asking for. And we have to take this into account. This is what they are asking. So this said, we've got also to come to terms with this issue of proteins. We cannot rely on 90% of imports. You were talking about flour and proteins. We've got to make choice. Maybe towards biotechnologies. I don't know. I don't know whether Europe can continue to have such a stiff position. I mean, we are a democratic country and all the choices are voted. Thank you.
Allora, vediamo se c'è un'ultima domanda.
Right, we now have time for one last question for our President, Mr. De Castro, who will have to leave us after this. Mr. Tassinari. Well, I do not want to seem too insistent, and anyway, in the afternoon I will have the chance of presenting my viewpoint in a more exhaustive way. Anyhow, what I've heard in the morning and what Paolo has just developed, as well as the questions that were asked, pose an important question. In my opinion, the Italian production and the European production are still waiting for you to understand the strategic positioning on the Italian, European and global market. I mean, this is the point. We need to define this position. And I'm telling you this because I believe that, and we have heard the considerations and remarks regarding 2.5 euros for oil. I've heard about all what was said about milk. But I mean, where should we aim for? Price competitiveness, which is cost competitiveness? Do we have the possibility to compete on this? And believe me, made in Italy and the Italian quality have always been my number one priority, but I have to come to terms with market logics which are based on the price and on the cost. I mean, can I actually come to terms with this kind of competition? Am I in the condition to compete on these 2 points? Because if this is not the case, then it is necessary to evaluate a different strategic position in logics. And you all know this better than I do. It is the positioning based on the quality, on the value of production. And this cannot follow the logics of costs. So if it is a cost issue, it is one thing. But if costs are not that determinant for competitiveness on the market, and you abandon, to save money, you abandon the specific values of the Italian production, then we run the risk of being unable to be competitive with those who pay their labor forces 7 euros a day, because that's the real problem. And in the meantime, we relinquish our values, which I believe are the winning values for Italy and Europe. And I believe that these are also the winning values worldwide. So, which is the strategic positioning of the European agriculture? With all what we have heard from Paolo. Then, depending on the strategic positioning, we shall act. I mean, this is the number one issue. I mean, if you define the strategic positioning, is it a matter of price and cost, or is it a matter of quality and values? Well, depending on this positioning, measures will follow. Otherwise, you and I run the risk that by taking away some characteristics because of the cost issue, we may actually lose too much. So let's try and develop a consistent scenario, and let's try and understand how we can survive, but specifically how we can win. So, Paolo, this is still vague. I mean, the Parliament has voted about something, but why is it that there is this 90% issue? Well, I think that 90% of the Italian consumers ask for guarantees, and politicians may have sometimes have to follow monopolistic powers, but in many cases politicians should do what citizens and consumers ask for. So, okay, I may have an open or a closed mind. This is not the issue. But the point here is, am I actually touching on something which is distinctive of my production? Well, I'm doomed to being non-competitive in terms of price and costs. Well, obviously we have already made this choice. I mean, have a look at what the Italian milk is used for. It is used for cheese. That's the use of Italian milk. And if this value was not there, our farmers would not be able to compete with the international prices. So we have to go on purporting our Italianity, our Italian nature, Italian characteristics. But of course there are European countries that make different decisions, that have a different strategic positioning from us. So this is a difficulty that Europe is tackling, that is developing a policy that can strengthen the distinctiveness of quality production, compensating with the higher value. You've quoted the example of Grana Padano and Parmigiano Reggiano and all our top quality cheeses. But in the same time, we must allow the Irish colleagues to be able to export their milk all over the world. So the problem is really a little bit complex because Europe is complex. It consists of many different member states with many different needs. There is another question. But please just ask the question, because we do not have time for comments and remarks. Mr. Zanetti? Attilio Zanetti. I sell DOP products, and I know the value of the protected origin denomination because this is part of my company. And I'm a very big exporter of Grana Padano and Parmigiano Reggiano, so I export the Italian value all over the world. But we cannot just rely on our history. We have to make our companies efficient. We must achieve cost efficiency. And we cannot forget about the international market. We cannot neglect international competition. We have to play our game on the international scene, and we must be efficient without neglecting the value of our products, because this is the only way how we can present them. So we need cost efficiency, we need to have a plan, and we need to have a strategy, we need to be farsighted. We need to have tactics, trying to predict and forecast the future so that we can best manage our flows, our profits, and the profits of the whole chain. As far as the GMOs are concerned, so many people are against them because of a lack of information. That's the serious situation we're in. Demagogics have taken over. And there are responsibilities in this respect. I mean, we're missing amazing opportunities, and others are taking advantage of this. Mr. Cesare Baldrighi. I shall be very, very brief. As far as competitiveness is concerned, and the relationship between farmers and processing companies, well, for sure the milk package has strengthened the position of milk producers. Because we should never forget about a fundamental element. That is, we're talking about farmers that produce small quantities. They're totally uninfluential on the market, and they are just undistinguishable. So we have so many farmers providing small quantities of milk on the market. You cannot discriminate between milk coming from one farm or from the other. So we need a coordination. So, of course, the quota system cannot be reproposed, we've heard that, but I believe that it is necessary to coordinate milk production on every front. And then, of course, as far as contracts are concerned, we have concentrated processing companies. We have one group coordinating the 4 or 5 brands which are the most relevant on the market. So the situation is the opposite to what one may think. And I believe that your comment on the positioning is very interesting as well, but this must be an objective positioning. we have forbidden, and the European Union has totally neglected the issue of GMOs, just to quote an example, but nevertheless, we import them from other countries, and so we still use them. So should we vote on these topics listening to what citizens claim, considering the fact that they are not competent on this very technical topic, or shouldn't it be that the right information is disseminated so that citizens can actually make their informed decisions? Thank you very much. I can't add anything to these two conclusive remarks. You have provided some further answers to the existing questions. Well, I believe that with the milk package, the European Parliament has somewhat enriched the proposal made by the Commission, which was not very articulated. Since 2010, the Parliament, thanks to the Lisbon Treaty, has acquired a few more powers. Otherwise, decisions are made by the Commission and negotiated by the Council. So the Parliament has finally given us a feedback regarding production planning that you've been asking for years. And we have to thank the Parliament for this. We shall go on working hard. We shall try to improve the situation and go in the indicated direction. But of course, the general climate in which decisions are made is influential, and it's very difficult to change the situation as far as information and disinformation is concerned. So, bodies consisting of elected members who have to act according to what their electing citizens claim, they cannot do much. I mean, we've often asked about scientific motivation for certain claims, but as long as this battle is a public opinion battle, a public awareness battle, then it is really very difficult to change this disseminated creed that is actually pointing to one single direction. So politicians cannot do much in this respect, I believe, because citizens, organizations, the very same union of industrial managers and leaders have some difficulties in clarifying this issue. And even though, as a scientist, I can tell you that in 4 or 5 years we shall have to sort out this situation. There is no hope. That is, it is not a decision made by one country. The world has made this decision. North America, South America, Australia, China. The very last Chinese program envisages $40 billion invested in biotechnologies. And the production scale has been lowered in biotechnology, so you no longer need thousands of billions of money to be invested in multinational companies. Multinational companies have a smaller weight in biotech today than in the past. You need just a small lab. And thanks to genome knowledge and existing technology, a small lab is able to patent varieties that will allow us to save water. And Europe will have to come to terms with this technological innovation. But public awareness must be in favor, and at the moment they're totally against this. Thank you very much to Chairman De Castro. Well, we can take advantage. Well, actually, it is 1 p.m., so I advise you to leave your documentation and headphones on your chairs and join us on the first floor where we shall have lunch together. And then we shall reconvene here to listen to Mr. Biela's presentation and Mr. Bergen's presentation. So we'll hear about their experiences, and we shall then conclude with a hot roundtable discussion.